Hello, welcome back to An Alcoholic Explains. This is episode 9, how to talk to a loved one about their drinking problem. This is episode 9. I'm very sorry I wasn't able to do an episode last week. I was feeling under the weather. I was also quite depressed and absolutely had no energy to produce any content last week. So I'm sorry for missing that episode. However, I am back this weekend and I hope that we can resume. How to talk to a loved one about their drinking. I think that this is a topic that a lot of you, a lot of my subscribers, a lot of my followers are going to appreciate, because I have a lot of loved ones who come to talk to me, and the first thing that they ask is, how do I talk to my loved one about their drinking? Because every time I do, it becomes this huge blow up. So let's talk about it. Approaching a loved one about their drinking problem is a delicate, often painful task. Yet, it is a conversation rooted in love and concern. Alcoholism, or alcohol use disorder, AUD, affects millions of people worldwide, not only hurting the individual but also straining families, friendships, and communities. Addressing a drinking problem can be life-changing, offering the person a chance to reclaim their health, friendships, relationships, and well-being. However, the complexity of addiction, the stigma around alcoholism, and the likelihood of denial makes this a very challenging discussion. So I'm going to talk to you about how to do this. So the first thing is understanding alcoholism. You have to approach them with a foundation from compassion. Before initiating the conversation, it is essential to understand alcoholism as more than just an issue of willpower, which is why I launched this podcast to begin with, which is why I have my channel to begin with, to humanize alcoholism, to put a face to alcoholism, to put a voice to alcoholism, to put a personality to alcoholism. So you can understand that alcoholism is not just about just say no. It's not about just saying no. This is a disease. It's a chronic, progressive condition that is characterized by a compulsive need for alcohol, despite its harmful consequences, and that is any addiction. So the person who's struggling with alcohol addiction may not always be fully aware of the extent of their problem. This gap in understanding underscores the importance of approaching the situation from a place of knowledge and compassion. So equipping yourself with information about the nature of addiction, its physical, psychological, and social dimensions can help you see your loved one as a person in need of support rather than judgment. And you can also see your loved one as a sick person, a person who is like a cancer patient, a person who has diabetes. They need to take their insulin. They need to go to chemotherapy. They need radiology. This is a very sick person. An alcoholic is a very sick person. Their behaviors may come out, the symptoms may come out as behavioral issues, obviously, such as manipulation, lying, stealing, violence, sexual and otherwise, deviancy. However, the root problem, as much as I would also say it's spiritual, is also, it's a disease. Like, this is not a person who's sitting back and saying, oh yes, I want to do these things. I want to ruin my life and the lives of my loved ones and everyone around me, and I want to ruin my career and my workplace and all my networks, and I'm going to do that by doing ABCD. No, that's not how it works. Often, as alcoholics, we don't even think we have a drinking problem to begin with. The second thing that I would recommend is that you choose the right time and setting. So timing and setting can determine the success of your conversation. Choose a moment when the person is sober, which can be difficult depending on how the alcoholism has advanced. It used to be very hard for my family to find me sober towards the end of my drinking, because I didn't even know when I was going to be sober. It was, I just couldn't be sober. I always had to be high. I always had to be tipsy. Well, I was looking to get tipsy, but I was always going to end up a drunk because I didn't have any or control to get tipsy. I would just end up getting blatantly drunk and belligerently drunk too, when my intention was just to get tipsy because it was my medicine. Alcohol was my medicine. It cured my depression. And then it was just this never-ending cycle of the only time I would be sober is if I completely had no money, and I'd run out of people to manipulate. Okay. So timing is essential. When the person is sober and emotionally stable, which can be difficult, as discussing the issue when they are under the influence will likely lead to defensiveness and denial. Additionally, ensure the setting is private, calm, and free of distractions. Public places or environments where emotions can flare will inhibit constructive dialogue. An ideal setting may be at home, during a quiet afternoon or evening when there's ample time to talk. So your demeanor must be calm and composed, as an aggressive or confrontational approach will likely cause the person to shut down or retaliate emotionally. So let them feel safe, knowing that this conversation stems from a place of care and concern. I would also add that one thing that the family members made wrong with me is that they blamed me for the drinking, right? And I guess I can understand that in the sense that it seems to be your fault, but that will immediately turn the person off. Like if you were trying to reach to someone, if you were trying to make someone understand where you're coming from, especially an alcoholic or an addict, the second you start blaming them about their addiction or their alcoholism is the second that you lose them. So you need to be able to talk to them about this issue without bringing up the you know, when you drink, you come home and you cause so much chaos, and you. Treat the alcoholic and the addict the way you would treat a cancer patient, a diabetic patient, or a sick person. You would treat a sick person with compassion. And it's true, because like an alcoholic is really someone who is suffering. They may not look like it, or you may think that they're really having fun. You know, they're really partying and they're really having fun, but this person is really tormented. And I'll tell you from firsthand knowledge, I was very tormented. I couldn't understand why I wasn't acting right. I couldn't understand why I was wasting my life away. I couldn't understand why I couldn't stop drinking. But then also I couldn't reconcile that alcohol was also the problem at the same time. So because it made me feel good and it was my cure for so long. So I couldn't let alcohol go. I couldn't blame the alcohol. But then I also couldn't understand why my life was the way it was. So when people came and blamed me, my ears automatically just shut off and I didn't hear anything anybody had to say. I would also suggest that you get a fellow alcoholic or an addict to talk to your person. That's the best way it works, actually. The best way for the message of alcoholism or addiction to be passed on is from one alcoholic or one addict to another. Because I'm telling my story of exactly how I drank, exactly what it did to me, exactly how I felt, and this is all real. And if the person who's listening is an alcoholic or an addict, they will relate. And when I'm finished with my story, they will want to know how I got sober. This is just how it works. If you haven't been in my shoes as an alcoholic or an addict, you don't understand the deep pain, the sorrow, the loneliness, the cognitive dissonance, the guilt, the overwhelming guilt. It's so much guilt, the shame of being an addict, of being an alcoholic, of fighting with that, and then it being so public in the sense that everybody can see your problem. You're wearing your problems. It's not hidden from anyone. Everybody in the neighborhood, everybody in town knows that you have this problem. And they all act like they're better than you because they're sober. They're showering in the morning and going to work. And they point at you and they laugh at you. And you just wear the shame 24/7. And you are also trying to figure out what is wrong with me. And everybody is looking at you and telling you it's the alcohol. Yet you are not able to reconcile for yourself that it's the alcohol or it's the drugs. Because for the longest time, that is the stuff that worked. So how can it not work anymore? Do you understand what I'm saying? Nobody gets that but a fellow alcoholic and addict. That is a deep internal fight. And it's a painful one. It's a really painful one. All right. So the third suggestion that I would make is start the conversations by using I statements. Please, for the love of whoever. The way you frame your words during this conversation is crucial. So avoid accusations or a tone that feels like an attack. Instead, focus on expressing your feelings through I statements. For example, rather than saying, "You drink too much," which can make the person defensive, say, "I've noticed that when you drink, you seem to struggle with X. And I'm wondering, or I'm worried about how it's affecting you." This softens the impact and makes it clear that your concern comes from love. By using non-confrontation language, you open the door to dialogue rather than debate. You also give the person room to reflect on their behavior without feeling targeted. Avoid making them feel as though they're being labeled bad or broken, but instead emphasize that it is the behavior or the alcohol use that is the problem. The fourth suggestion is listen and avoid judgment. So listening actively and attentively is perhaps the most crucial part of this conversation. Allow your loved one to express their thoughts and feelings without interruption. If they become defensive or dismissive, resist the urge to argue. Instead, acknowledge their feelings by saying something like, "I understand this might be difficult to talk about." It is important not to dismiss or trivialize their perspective, even if it contradicts your own view of the situation. Your role is to express concern, not to solve their problem on the spot. Many people battling alcoholism may not be ready to admit that they have a problem or take immediate action. So the purpose of the conversation is to plant a seed of awareness that may lead to change later, not necessarily to achieve immediate results. The fifth suggestion, expressing the impact of their drinking. So it is also important to gently but honestly communicate how their drinking is affecting not just them, but also the people around them. So this can be challenging because it involves discussing potentially painful topics, but it is necessary to make them aware of the broader consequences of their behaviors. For instance, you might say, "When you drink heavily, I notice that it's harder for us to connect, and it hurts me to see you in pain." The goal is to help them see that their alcohol use is not isolated to their life, but has ripple effects on relationships, work, and their overall well-being. The key here is to avoid blaming them for your feelings, but rather to show them the natural consequences of their drinking habits. So what I would want to say about this as well is that part of myself, I would speak for myself, part of myself knew that I was really hurting my family, I guess. Part of me did know that. And it's what fueled the drinking for me, because I felt so much shame and so much guilt that I couldn't be the person my family wanted me to be. I couldn't be that standard or that Waihiga, or I just could never raise up to their standards. So the drinking just kept going on and on and on for me. And the more they talked about, this hurts the family, or why are you doing this or that, the more guilt it piled on for me, and the more I would cope through drinking. So this guilt trip, that's exactly how I would see it. Whenever an intervention was done and the family was brought up, it made me feel guilty, and it made me feel like I need to stop drinking for my family's sake. There's also a point in my drinking where I was very delusional, in which I think I told myself, because the guilt was so painful, I told myself that there's nobody else I'm harming but myself. I drink alone. I don't source money from my parents to drink. I don't, quote unquote, steal anything from home. I would tell myself things like that. I don't make my parents come with me to the bar. I don't literally steal their credit cards and sit down at the bar and swipe and swipe and swipe. I don't steal money out of their wallets and their purses. I don't sell their jewelry and pawn their fridges and their TVs to go and drink like other kids do. I'm actually more responsible about my drinking. I make other people in the bars pay for my drinking, and then I face the consequences. That's honestly what I thought. I thought that my drinking wasn't hurting my family at all, because I drank solo, I drank outside of the house, and I would disappear for like 2 weeks, and rarely did my family see me drunk, as much as I could control it. Towards the end of my drinking, I used to come home in all kinds of states. I used to come home drunk, I used to come home semi-drunk, I used to come home dry drunk. It was bad. I used to come home at any hour. I wasn't even aware of what time it was. 1 minute it would be 11 a.m. The next minute it was 3 a.m. And that's the time I'm rocking up to the gate. And at that point, I really wasn't thinking, oh yeah, I'm hurting my family. So a lot of us alcoholics actually don't think we're hurting our families, because we're either paying our own bills, or we live on our own, or we isolate when we're drinking, or we're not in contact with our families when we're drinking, or we're using our own money to drink, or we have jobs, or we're paying our own bills. So why is my family so pressed about me drinking like I'm an adult? It says on the bottle for age 18 and above. Obviously it also says drink responsibly, but yeah, I'm being responsible. I'm paying my bills. I'm going to work. I'm drinking my own money. Yeah, no one has the right to tell me if I should drink or not. And we don't see that we're actually hurting our families a lot. So I honestly did believe that I was hurting nobody but myself when I was drinking. The sixth thing is to set healthy boundaries for yourself. So while offering support is crucial, I think the most important thing is to set boundaries to protect your own emotional well-being and your physical well-being. So it's easy to become so consumed by helping a loved one that you neglect your own needs. So be clear about what behaviors you're willing to tolerate and how you will respond if they continue to spiral. So boundaries are not about punishing the person, but about safeguarding your own health while encouraging the responsibility. So for example, you may say, I'm here to support you, but I can't continue to stay silent when your drinking is causing harm. I hope you understand that I need to take care of myself too. And this is where I find a lot of families and loved ones go wrong. The alcoholic is sinking ship, and the family or the loved ones, because they're seeing the alcoholic is a sinking ship, instead of also deciding to take responsibility for themselves, they get sick. They get affected by this disease of alcoholism because it is a family disease. Trust me, it is. Whether you're drinking or not, this disease is affecting that whole family in that house. Alcoholism makes the whole family dysfunctional. And then everybody looks at the alcoholic and they're like, well, you're the one with the clear issue. If only you got sober, if only you get your life together, then this whole family would be fine and perfect, right? And let's say that alcoholic actually gets sober. Turns out the family will actually not be perfect and fine because there are other dysfunctions within this family. The alcoholic just picked up a drink because that's the way they coped with the dysfunction of this family. Alcoholism and addiction runs in dysfunctional families. I'll tell you that for free. The alcoholic is just the physical manifestation of the spiritual and emotional dysfunctions of that whole family. So the whole family gets to mock and look at the alcoholic and be like, oh, look at this person. They're embarrassing us. They're shaming us. But really, even the mentally ill person in the family, like the one who has the schizophrenia or the bipolar, that's often the person who's carrying the physical manifestations of the family's dysfunction, because it has to go somewhere. It has to manifest somewhere in someone. I would suggest that the family, each individual is responsible for working on themselves. So everybody gets focused on the alcoholic or the obviously sick person, that the ones that are not so obviously sick, put all their expectations and all of that onto the person that is obviously sick. I would suggest that everybody work their own program, which is why it's suggested that if you are in a relationship with an alcoholic, or you come from a family of alcoholics, you should enter a program called Al-Anon. And Al-Anon teaches you how to live a life independent of the dysfunction of alcoholism, because these two things get very enmeshed. An alcoholic and the people around them, they get very enmeshed with each other. And that is all I will say about that. You need to take care of yourself as well and take the focus off of the alcoholic and maybe put the focus on yourself and what you need to be doing and how you need to be taking care of yourself. God will take care of the alcoholic. You're not the God of the alcoholic. God will take care of the alcoholic. You need to start focusing on yourself and your program. Right. So, talking to a loved one about their drinking problem is an act of courage, patience, and love. It is a conversation that may not yield immediate results, but approaching it with empathy, respect, and careful planning, you can help them take the first steps towards recovery. Remember, the goal is not to control their behavior, which a lot of people do. Let's be honest, a lot of alcoholics and addicts come from controlling and dysfunctional families. But to offer them the support they need to make healthier choices. In the end, the most powerful tool you have is your unwavering commitment to their well-being. And by speaking love, you provide them with the opportunity to recognize their worth and begin the path to healing. So I appreciate you for listening to this point. I would love to hear your comments, especially on the family, the dysfunctional family. the alcoholic being the physical manifestation of the family's problems. And I would love to hear your thoughts about that. So let me know in the comment section down below. Until the next video, goodbye. And before I even go, Al-Anon is a free service. So please, if you're a loved one of an alcoholic and you are struggling with how to support an alcoholic, you need to take the focus off of the alcoholic and you need to put the focus back onto yourself. So go online, go into Google, look for Al-Anon meetings near me, right? If you're an alcoholic and you want to stop drinking, you go onto Google and you look for Alcoholics Anonymous meetings near me. Okay? Until the next video. Bye, guys.